Up next, Authentically Detroit welcomes Peter Blackmer and Lloyd Simpson and Antonio Cosme of Voices from the Grassroots, a project highlighting the perspectives of longtime Black Detroiters and grassroots organizers who have a different idea on what revitalization looks like for Detroit. But first, this week's hot takes from Axios and the Detroit News. Michigan Democrats split on Israel-Palestinian support, and slain Detroit area synagogue leader fought for everyone. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Hey, it's Stephen Henderson from WDET and Bridge Detroit. If you love listening to Orlando and Donna's incisive interviews and conversations on the Authentically Detroit podcast, I hope you'll also listen to the podcast I host, Detroit Today from WDET on Detroit's NPR station. Detroit Today is a daily podcast where I talk with community leaders, elected officials, and residents of Detroit, the region, and the state about politics and the values that animate our communities. Listen to Detroit Today every day on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Cast Corridor at the WDET studios. We are a content partner to bridgedetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
And we are back. Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. And today, Donna and I are joined by three guests that are releasing a project about a subject that is near and dear to both of our hearts. Founder and facilitator Peter Blackmer and contributing writer Lloyd Simpson of Voices from the Grassroots are here with one of their interview subjects, Antonio Cosme, to share exclusive insight into the project, which highlights longtime Black Detroiters and grassroots organizer perspectives on revitalizing the city. Peter, Antonio, and Lloyd, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Hey.
Thanks for having us, Orlando.
What's going on?
I'm really happy to have you guys here. All right, so it's Monday, and there's, a lot going on. Donna, how's the day finding you? How was your weekend?
I had a good weekend, I think.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what it was.
You was on your bike.
I was on my bike. Listen, it was a very short ride. I rode. Brisk ride. So I rode my bike on the expanded Riverwalk between Belle Isle and Mount Elliott Park. And immediately came home and ordered some winter bike riding gear because my face and my fingers were frozen. But I'm super excited to be on my bike on the riverfront and be able to ride my bike. I'm trying to
all the
get
way to Belle Isle.
Well, I mean, I live very close to Belle Isle, so I don't want to make that sound like it's doing something. But I've been riding my bike to work a couple days a week. Hey. And I'm trying to find a new route to work because, listen, if we're talking about mobility and reducing the carbon footprint, I'm going to reduce it on my own and try to get fit, right? So it's my contribution for this weekend, and that was the exciting part.
Oh, man, Antonio, Lloyd, Peter, how y'all feeling? Y'all doing okay?
We're doing well. I mean, I had a beautiful weekend. The fall colors are finally coming into Detroit. Did a little bit of hiking.
Where do you hike?
I love going by U of M Dearborn.
Okay.
And then Rouge Park are the two of the biggest ones in the city.
Y'all need to follow him on Instagram and see all of his adventures. It's super fun.
I was just watching, speaking of Twitter, I was just reading something about when the left goes wrong or something, and there was somebody who was talking about how hiking was some capitalistic excess, and it got super interesting. I was like, okay, you're not going to take all the fun out of my life.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, just being in touch with nature. I mean, the pumpkins, apples, mushrooms. It's hunting season right now.
Yeah, and it's fall in
popping.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Like it's a beautiful time.
It is.
Lloyd and Peter, are y'all all right? How y'all feeling?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I like fall, but I'm already missing summer.
If we being honest, me too.
Yeah,
I am too.
But it was good, yeah.
Good, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. I spent the weekend with my chosen family back at the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at UMass, honoring one of our late professors who made his transition earlier this year. So surrounded by love and reflection and just honoring the legacies of one of the founders of Black Studies and a real
my chosen
champion.
family. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Chosen
Love
family.
that.
That's
Yeah.
really good, right?
Yes, it is.
All right, y'all, let's get into it. It's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. For Hot Takes, Michigan Democrats split on Israel-Palestinian support. This is by Sam Robinson at Axios. Metro Detroiters are paying close attention to what elected leaders are saying about fighting in Israel and the Gaza Strip after hundreds were killed following a surprise attack on October 7th by Hamas. The wide range of statements from local politicians reflects Southeast Michigan's divided feelings on the topic. The region is home to the nation's largest Arab American population and America's only Palestinian congressperson. As long as our country provides billions in unconditional funding to support the apartheid government, this heartbreaking cycle of violence will continue, U.S. Representative Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat who represents parts of Dearborn and Detroit, said in a statement. State Senator Jeremy Moss, Democrat from Southfield, who is Jewish, criticized Tlaib's statement, saying it refused to acknowledge a shocking act of terrorism. Hamas's violence is not some mere effort of resistance. It is a primary cause of instability in the region that prevents both Israelis and Palestinians from living in peace without fear, Moss says. Governor Gretchen Whitmer was heavily criticized after her initial post in reference to the violence that failed to mention any specifics. Hours later, she added to her original statement, "There is no justification for violence against Israel. My support is steadfast." Former state rep Abdullah Haman, the mayor of Dearborn, first took to Instagram to criticize President Biden's remarks to the killings before issuing a longer statement in support of Palestinian rights. Ending this violence requires ending the occupation, Haman wrote. Wayne County Health Director Abdul El Sayed has also made social media comments in support of the Palestinian cause. Where leaders stand on this issue is a litmus test for voters in the area concerned with Palestinian rights. Supporting Israel came with political blowback this summer for State Senator Sylvia Santana, a Democrat from Detroit, who apologized to her Arab American constituents after visiting Israel. She said, "I should have exercised better discretion and engaged in a different protocol with community leaders to seek their counsel prior to the trip." Donna, what say you?
If we lived in the world where all human beings were considered human, it would be a better place. Our ability to put people in caste and classify them as worth protecting allows these narratives to continue. I made the mistake of waking up one day last week and deciding it was a really good idea to watch a documentary. I think it's called Tears for Hamas, and it took place, Tears for Gaza. Tears for Gaza. And it took place in 2008 or 2009. And it's the story of what's happening. It's a documentary filmed in somebody's iPhone camera or whatever, following these children and these adults. And you can see how the air is monitored by helicopters and fighter pilots, and the seas are occupied by these, fighting vessels. And the impact on these little kids, just even the way their body language shows it. And that's before you start seeing the bombing. And I watched Gaza being bombed in real time, watched senior citizens running away, children, this man who got married saying, "I've lost my entire family and I can't afford anything." This is in 2008 or 2009, and it's now 2023, and the bombing is seemingly great retaliation because some people did some horrible things. And I will never say that beheading or violence or kidnapping or any of those things are good. But I think that we have to also acknowledge the fact that we live in a world where we create radicalism by oppressing people in such a way. And I wonder what one of those little
very
boys,
important complexity. Yeah.
What one of those little boys who grew up like that, grew up thinking, and is he in Hamas now? Did he grow up looking at the sky, looking at all of that fear, and all he knows of Israeli people is they have their foot on my neck and I don't have food, and I lost my father, and I lost my brother, and I lost my uncles? At some point, we have got to stop and ask ourselves, where is the humanity in this? And the final thing I want to say is that when I go on vacations, I love Kevin because he loves me, and I don't know how anybody can deal with me because last year we went on this vacation and I read The Ghost of King Leopold. We listened to the audiobook of The Ghost of King Leopold. So we were listening to genocide in the Congo. It's like, hey, baby, isn't this a fun vacation? And this year I said, let's listen to Michael Harriot's Black AF History. If you haven't listened to it, it's amazing. But also, he speaks of slave revolts, and he speaks of how people were revolting against being held in slavery.
And that was terrorism.
And that was terrorism. And how people said, oh, these black folks are violent. See, that's the reason we need to hold them as slaves, because they're not fully human. Not acknowledging the bestiality of holding people as slaves. So I think when we just acknowledge the fact that when humans do certain things to humans, bad things happen. And this is not at all to minimize what happened during the genocide that took place in Germany. It's not to minimize that. But as I posted on a Facebook comment, it's no fun when the rabbit gets the gun. Any rabbit, any gun. Okay? I believe and I understand that the gun has been turned on you, but that does not justify as a human being turning on other people like this. And I think that we're just living in a society where people are teaming up trying to decide who do we get to hate. And we're not going to fix any of this unless we figure out how do we get to love.
Yeah, I would like to offer a critique to my colleagues in media and journalism in the oversimplistic way that this is being covered without contextualization, without nuance, and without acknowledging the complex history of the region over there. It is extremely irresponsible how I feel like this is being covered. And my admonishment to anyone who is reading up on this and, following the news of what's happening over there is to fact check 3 times. You know what I mean? Like really, the New York Times, the paper of record in America, had to retract an article recently about a hospital bombing over there. I mean, there's so many people who are getting it wrong, and so many people who are posting without context, without knowing history, and having to retract and quietly delete. Please, please, please do your homework. And media, we need to be way more responsible, complex, and nuanced when covering this issue, especially here in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I would just say, I would like for anybody who is consuming the news. I don't watch television news and haven't for over 10 years. It's the best decision in my life. But anybody who's consuming news, I would like for people to do this. Close your eyes and imagine yourself in anybody's place, right? We were taught to do this as children. Treat people how you like to be treated. Okay, so let's have that conversation. Imagine living in a place where you really don't have rights, where you don't really have opportunity, where your future is
not
defined,
enough water to drink.
Not enough water to drink. Your future is defined by your ethnicity.
Which is an international crime.
It's an international crime. But even before then, you're living among rubble and you are playing soccer with grenades because you don't have things. Imagine understanding the reason you don't have things is these people. And ask me, would you love them? Imagine having, how many thousands of people died in the Israeli attacks in 2008 and 2009? I don't know get the exact years. How many children died then? Thousands. And imagine none of those children having names, none of those children's heads being of concern to anybody. Imagine that not being called terrorism. Imagine terrorism being when you did horrible things that should not be done to the people who didn't do it to you, but who were related by ethnicity to the people who did. Because if it's wrong to harm people based on ethnic relations or ethnic identity, it's wrong on all sides. If it's wrong to kill children, it's just wrong to kill children. Let's not put an asterisk by it. But I think that the thing that bothers me the most is when I hear people attacking the only Palestinian congressperson who's got family in Palestine right now.
Who did not say anything crazy.
Not saying anything other than
reasonable.
She has fought for black people. She has fought for Native American people. She has fought for Latino people. She has fought for poor people. She's fought for people. We need to fight for her.
Yeah.
It hurt me. So I sent her a message and I said, it hurts me to know that you're being attacked like this. How can you on the one hand, say people matter. Why is it okay for her to defend your people, but not her own?
We're talking about Rashida Tlaib, who's a friend of this show. Go ahead,
and a
Donna.
friend of mine. She's somebody
Democrats
who I
need to get it
admire and
together, honestly. The
appreciate.
Democrats really needed to get it together. They're slowly becoming the war party. I mean, under Joe Biden's tenure, like, we're going to see the next campaign. We're going to let Trump be the peace candidate, which is absolutely insane. But I want to say, like, Nelson Mandela, terrorist. He would have been called a terrorist.
He was
the
called,
Comanches as
he
the United States.
was called a terrorist.
Nat Turner was called a terrorist. Yes.
As the United States was settling the West, the Comanches, Geronimo, they were terrorists. Terrorism is a new framework that nation states can apply to minority groups and communities who are being suppressed by their group. It's a new framework the United States created.
It's a new word for an old framework that is international in scope and historical. Going back, because it's, I mean, when I read the Ghost of King Leopold and just, really got to thinking about,
and I took that tour in colonial Belgium.
In colonial Belgium.
Let me tell you that. For GMF, for the German Marshall Fund, it was the first thing that we did when we got off the plane. Yodeep Mesfin Johnson and myself, we were completely infuriated. We were infuriated by that.
I mean, settler colonialism has one impact, right? And so we call it different names. It's always the same thing. It's never love. And so I think, it's never sharing the land. It's always meant to be a displacing activity. And I think that, the Democrats, U.S. foreign policy, Democrats and Republicans, the difference between the foreign policy between Democrats and Republicans is very small.
Yeah.
Who was president when the war on Vietnam was declared?
LBJ.
Who? No, it was Kennedy. And who escalated that war?
LBJ.
And who defended it? And everybody who was in political power agreed with that war, even while Muhammad Ali didn't. So I think that you also have to ask yourselves, what does it mean to be the greatest nation in the world and the world superpower? And how much of what we do in the world is exporting and using violence to maintain this privileged identity and this privileged existence? So I feel, to a certain extent, not ashamed of the Democratic Party, but ashamed of our nation for not waking up and understanding that it's not okay to have people die in the name of freedom.
The final question that I would ask, especially as a person in the media and that I don't hear being asked, so it's been widely reported that there are Americans among those who have been kidnapped by the Hamas group. But we also know that Israeli forces have been habitually bombing Gaza. But nobody's asking if Americans are also caught in that crossfire. Are Americans also dying as a result of these bombings? I have not heard anybody ask that question.
And do American lives matter more? Didn't all lives matter? Didn't some people come out and say all lives matter? Former Representative Peter Amash in the Grand Rapids area, the far-right Republican who said, Trump should be impeached and lost his job because of that, was actually, and I didn't realize this, the first Palestinian congressperson. And he lost a whole bunch of family members in Palestine and came out with that, Wow. And so even if you're not American, if you have people you love who are in this place, then it's impacting Americans. And I think that... But what my point is... I get your point. Yeah. I understand it. I just wanted to point out, I don't mean to undercut your point, because you make a great point that... We don't ask, are there Americans who are in these places? Of course there are. We don't ask if there are children who are dying and being beheaded by these practices. Of course there are. And, so I think that the way that the news is skewed is unfortunate, and it's historical. And so we always look back
and
in
it's
history.
A referendum on where we are in journalism and media right now, and it's very disappointing.
But it's historical. The role of journalism to some extent is to reinforce the political construct. That's right. That's the role of education. That's right. And so when we understand that, then we understand that, this is sort of rogue journalism here on the podcast.
Yep.
We kind of say what we think. And, and I'm happy to be roguish because I think,
that's why the legacy media is dying, and that's why the Democratic Party is suffering and losing, because
right?
they're on the side of these old regimes. I mean, it's part of like the overall decline of the West, I think, honestly. Like, we lose all moral authority as a nation by supporting unequivocally Israel without criticizing them. Lose all moral authority.
Without complexity and without nuance.
We're
going to put a button on this conversation.
I'm just going to say we've never had moral authority. We've claimed it and never deserved it.
Yes.
Take a break.
Right.
We will be right back. We're going to talk about the slain Detroit area synagogue leader who fought for everyone who passed away over the weekend.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
You are listening to Authentically Detroit, and we are back with Peter, Antonio, and Lloyd for Hot Takes. Slain Detroit area synagogue leader fought for everyone. This is by Jennifer Chambers and Maisha Johnson at the Detroit News. Hundreds of mourners gathered Sunday, heartbroken over the death of Jewish leader and activist Samantha Wall, and to memorialize her passion for building bridges between communities. Monica Wall rose and cried out for her 40-year-old sister, whose white casket sat on the altar of the Hebrew Memorial Chapel in Oak Park, where Wall's funeral service drew hundreds of all faiths, races, and nationalities from across Metro Detroit. Wall was found stabbed to death outside her home early Saturday. The death remains under investigation, with Detroit's police chief saying there was no evidence the crime was motivated by anti-Semitism. Wall, board president of the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue, also was an artist and a painter who loved learning languages and listening to opera, teaching her nieces and nephews with markers, books, and stickers, Rosen said. As president of the synagogue, a revitalized congregation in the heart of Detroit, Wall helped lead its fundraising campaign and grand reopening just 2 months ago. Bridge Detroit wrote about it. She was involved with several interfaith organizations in Metro Detroit and was the embodiment of Tikkun Olam, making the world a better place and pursuing justice for all, her family and friends said on Sunday. A University of Michigan graduate, Wall was a former staffer for U.S. Rep. Alyssa Slotkin, a Democrat out of Lansing, and former campaign manager for Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, who spoke Sunday at the service. Nessel said Wall was a tenacious advocate and supporter of social justice and a woman of great faith with a passion for equal treatment of all people. This was not an opinion. This was a fact. This was not how Sam presented to some people. It was how Sam treated each and every person, whomever came into her life, Nessel said. Sam was all things to all people. State Senator Stephanie Chang described Wall as endlessly positive, brilliant, and kind. Sam helped out on Chang's 2014 campaign. She said she was passionate about social justice and about equity, Chang said. She knew how to build a team and make everyone feel valued. Chang said she heard after Wall's death from many people in the community, including those of Jewish and Muslim faith, who were friends with Wall, about the impact she had on them. Since the October 7th events in the Middle East, Chang said she and Wall had been speaking about connecting with groups who were helping residents on the ground there. Donna, what say you?
It's tragic.
Yeah.
It's tragic. I don't have anything beyond, I woke up and read this and was just, once again, struck dumb. I hate the fact that people are using this for political purposes, because she was, by all measures, from everything I've heard from everybody, a beautiful person.
She was. I knew her.
Who would not want her killing to be politicized. But I also want to really honor many people I know of Jewish faith in this community who also did not want her death politicized and who also urged calm and don't jump to conclusions. So it makes me proud sometimes to be a Detroiter is that Detroit has not so far joined in sort of this horrific, kind of conversation around things. So I hope that that whoever killed her is caught and punished for that horrific crime. That's it.
Detroit Police Chief James White just finished a press conference about an hour before we started, and he is still saying and presenting that right now there is no evidence of a hate crime or anti-Semitism. But, Donna, my initial reaction to this was one of just shock, right, and trauma, especially the fact that it was a stabbing. And, I sat in that for a minute and I thought about the tremendous amount of effort and rage and strength that it takes to end someone's life by stabbing them, right? How pierce skin and, hitting and breaking the arteries and whatever vital organs that need to be ruptured in order to kill someone. This feels like a tremendous amount of rage and also very personal. I don't want to speculate while the police do their investigation. The police are being very tight-lipped about this. We've asked a ton of questions, and they continue to push back on us around the statements that they've already released and letting that stand for now. But this story is far from over, and her death has left a wide and gaping hole in the hearts of so many Metro Detroiters.
She's also a woman. And we know violence against women is a thing. She was a loving and compassionate woman. And we know that there are people who will always be attracted to exploiting and harming compassionate and loving women who sometimes allow people who they shouldn't in their midst. And I'm not trying to blame her. I'm trying to say that we got to do a better job protecting women, period. And whoever it is, I hope that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I'm glad the police department is making these statements. I wish they were not so tight-lipped that what they're saying could not be believable. But you know what I'm saying? Because I think they could, I think they know more than what they're saying.
Oh, I think they do too.
And I think that knowing more than what you say sometimes can help put out some of the fires. So anyway, I hope the case moves along quickly. But I also hope that we always remember that she was a woman and that we need to protect our women.
Yep, we'll stay on top of this. All right, you'll hear from us again when there is an update. We're going to move on, okay? Detroit has a rich history of grassroots activism that has all too often been overlooked by mainstream media. The community leaders and organizers who have been working tirelessly to uplift their neighborhoods and combat systemic injustices all too often go unheard. This lack of representation creates a distorted narrative of Detroit's history, one that fails to acknowledge the voices and visions of its people. This is especially important today as 2023 marks 10 years since emergency management was imposed over the city of Detroit. That is why the Voices of the Grassroots Oral History Project is launching on October 26, 2023. Here with us today, we have Peter Blackmer and Lloyd Simpson, along with Antonio Cosme. Peter Blackmer is the producer of the Voices of Grassroots Oral History Project and assistant professor of Africology and African American Studies at Eastern Michigan University. He is also the lead researcher for the National Digital Humanities Project Rise Up North and previously a research fellow with the Detroit Equity Action Lab, an initiative of the Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights at Wayne State University Law School. Lloyd Simpson, a contributor writer for the Voices from the Grassroots Project, as well as a current PhD candidate at the University of Michigan, studying history. Yeah, what a win they had over the weekend. Lloyd graduated from Wayne State University with his bachelor's in African American Studies and a minor in history. His current research focus is on the following: police violence and community activism in 20th century Detroit. That's what I'm talking about.
I am so excited
Labor
about
history
this interview.
And racial capitalism. Lloyd is also a member of Detroit Will Breathe, a radical direct action organization. And also here with us is one of the interview subjects in the Oral History Project, my friend, my former classmate at Eastern Michigan University. He's all things, right? Antonio Cosme. All right. Whew, that was a handful. Let's get into it. Donna, What you feeling?
Woo, I'm so excited. All these topics, everything you do, I just want you to know I really honor it. I see, Antonio, that you have a book, Toxic Debt by Josiah Rector. We brought him to Detroit last year. Such a great thinker and speaker and person who lays out some of our tragic history and also some of the institutional flaws. So, wow, racial capitalism, we don't have enough time. So we do have some questions. And so I guess we'll start with, what is Visionary Action Lab? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Not Visionary. Voices of the Grassroots. I'm sorry. Another interview, Voices of the Grassroots. What is Voices of the Grassroots?
So Voices of the Grassroots is it's a fairly large and ambitious oral history project that we started back in 2019, a year before the pandemic shut everything down, including this project. And it's a collection of almost 50 interviews. Most are about hour and a half, 2 hours long, all video recorded, audio recorded, with over 40 grassroots organizers, activists, community experts, people who've been doing the work for Black liberation, racial justice, and challenging systemic racism in Detroit over the past 20 and largely, even more years. Because what we understand is that emergency management didn't just come out of the blue. It didn't just come out of the sky, and that people were doing the work on the ground for decades. And one of the things that we amplify in this collection of oral history interviews is the connection between Detroit's rich legacy and traditions of resistance, of Black freedom struggles in this city, and the people who are veterans of those movements that are still doing the work. I'm thinking like Maureen Taylor, Marion Kramer Baker, that have been on the front lines against water shutoffs too. They've been on the front lines against utility shutoffs and fighting for welfare rights for poor and working class Black and brown Detroiters. And that so often these freedom fighters have been not just marginalized, but criminalized in this city, in a city that professes to uphold, let's be real about it, co-opt legacies of struggle here, all while acting in directly against the very things that many of the people that we venerate in these histories were fighting for. So this project tries to amplify those voices of people who have been carrying forth those traditions of resistance, those traditions of Black radicalism in this city, and bringing those to bear upon this period of displacement, dispossession,
erasure,
dismantling of Black power.
Let's say all of it.
It is a dismantling.
And misremembering.
It's dismantling and appropriation. It's cultural appropriation, right? So you're going to appropriate the name Coleman Young without the legacy, appropriate the names of some of the folks who've done stuff on the ground. And in this administration is very skilled at that kind of appropriating behavior.
Oh, yeah.
It's very important that we raise up. I teach a class at Columbia University on...
Where you teach at? Where you teach at again?
At
Columbia University.
I teach a class online, and I had to do research for the class, right? And in my research, understanding that Black people in the city of Detroit have been radical since the 18th century and have never stopped. Understanding that Detroit has led the way in forming many radical movements that still resonate all through the nation and sometimes in the world. We have a responsibility, I think, to raise that history back up, and you're doing that. So how's it going? I mean, you have this project, you're doing it, and what happens next with all of this?
I know y'all talking to the right people. When I saw Antonio walk in, I was like,
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. The first time I saw Antonio was at a social justice conference at Wayne State in 2016. I think my interns had invited me to be at this social justice conference, and you were sharing the stage with Rashida, and I don't remember who else, and you were just outstanding. So I always remember you from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was, me and my buddy Luca were some of the people who were caught under Mayor Duggan administration's graffiti task force. So in 2000, I think it was around 15, 16, when I had painted Free the Water on a water tower to oppose the water shutoffs and the foreclosures and the emergency management, all of these things are interconnected. I mean, the Flint water crisis, the 150,000 people who lost their homes in Detroit are a direct result of the financial crisis.
That's right.
And I think that's what one of my biggest overall takes of the history that people need to know is the narrative that is spun is one that is very much blaming individual Detroiters for their decision to support city council as opposed to the actual institutions, such as like
systems.
There's no way any city council person could have stopped globalization from happening, could have stopped the auto industry from decentralizing away from strong unions. There's no way that the Detroit City Council could have stopped the redlining from happening, the federal government from subsidizing the growth of the suburbs, the white flight, all of these institutions that left Detroit bankrupt. Not to mention the water systems. Detroiters paid for the water infrastructure that allowed the suburbs to grow, and they took that water infrastructure's debt and used it to take our city's control away from us and our water system away from us.
That's right. I mean, I think that when I talk about it as financialization, because financialization really indicates that it's the Poor's and Standard & Poor's and Moody's that are really controlling whatever they want to see happens. And so if you look at comparing Standard & Poor's and Moody's to the International Monetary Fund, right? Mm-hmm. And the International Monetary Fund decides, the World Bank can invest here because this nation's laws and policies represent the best of democracy, when in fact what they're doing is representing the needs of the businesses and corporations inside of there. And it's the same thing in Detroit. So I look at Detroit as an internal colony, 100%. one that has dispossessed the people of all of those things. And because we look at these things all in these little silos, we don't look at the big picture like you're discussing it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that IMF and World Bank comparison is so on point, because if you look at the ways in which the United States, so here's how it goes. United States will fund paramilitaries in Chile, will overthrow the government of Chile. Chile will be half destroyed. They have to take out a bunch of IMF and World Bank loans to get back. And when they can't pay back those loans because the interest rates are too high, we say, give us your education system, sell your medical system to some of our corporations. We want those mining rights in your state. We actually want you to produce this food, and we're going to keep you from developing.
Right.
So that exact same system was the same system Detroit was placed under these consent agreements and under these decrees.
So when you have citizenship that's not complete, right? When you have a city that is comprised of primarily non-U.S. citizens in the eyes of the people who are policymakers, then policy is not designed for your people. Your people are the object of policy, not the subject of policy. How can we develop policy to exploit, to extract value from these people, whether it is prison labor or whatever it is that we're doing?
It's housing stock, all the best housing.
Well, let's make it plain. Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz said it. There's no such thing as a second-class citizen. You're either a citizen or you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we're talking about. With emergency management, we're talking about the erasure of the rights of citizenship.
Democratic power.
Right.
One of the things that's really interesting to me that I love as a journalist is that you all are also building a repository of content that would make it impossible for us to misremember. Right, and impossible for folks and their voices and their contribution to Detroit as we know it to be erased. Why was that important?
That was the fundamental premise of this project. Because when we started this up in 2019, what we recognized was that this is a pivotal chapter in this city's history. We're talking about this mass period of corporate capture, of the theft of public assets, whether that's pensions or schools or lands or the water system. We can go in on that in detail, but this was all taking place, but it was being branded in ways that it was something that it was not. We know what the dominant narratives were about this period.
And folks were complicit. The media was complicit.
Exactly.
Big time.
And that was we felt that was our responsibility.
Local and national.
We're sitting at WDET. They tried to film 2 years later where they wanted to uplift the narratives of Mike Duggan, of Rick Snyder, of Jones Day Emergency Law Firm. We interrupted that event and shut it down. It was like 15 of us in the audience. We got up one after the other and completely shut that event down because we did not want WDET, our public radio station, to participate in supporting these violent narratives that erase the deep anti-blackness.
And even most recently, we're talking about an update on 10 years post-bankruptcy and the narratives that have been cascaded 10 years after bankruptcy about how Detroit, and it pisses me off to no end. The literal that people right now, democracy and holding on to it is a talking point of the Democratic Party, but in Detroit, you're decades late in the conversation on democracy. And when we talk about the literal theft theft of wealth and from our pensioners. None of that is mentioned, but we saved the art.
But you know
Yeah.
what?
Hey.
You know what? None of that happens unless you dehumanize people. You dehumanize Detroiters. And what you guys are doing is rehumanizing people. And I'm excited that there's
Yeah.
150 people, because it's not 150 names that most Detroiters know. You've named some of the big names, but there's a whole lot of people who've been fighting in the trenches for all that time. It looks like you have something.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that we want to be careful not to historicize, what happened under emergency management, because people are still dealing
Exactly.
with the fallout of that. And also the folks profiled in this project, I mean, one of them's right next to us now,
Right.
are still working. They're still working on this. They're still fighting these fights around water, housing, and neoliberal dispossession. Right.
But not every name is a household name.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody
And
ain't
I'm
Antonio
excited
Cosme.
that we're going, because we see Antonio, we certainly know Maureen and Marion, but we don't know everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we should know everybody. That's the beautiful thing about working in the neighborhood I'm in. There's some folks, they're like, you are one amazing person, and nobody knows your name. And the idea that you're going to give name and face to these battles and these people is just super exciting to me.
We're going to take our last break of the show. We'll be right back, y'all.
Yeah.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the Neighborhood Tech Hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
All right, welcome back to Authentically Detroit. We are having, Donna and I love this conversation. Donna, you were making a good point before you went to break.
I don't know the point I was making. I just want to say, because I have so many points. I mean, I feel like, every once in a while you get to just talk to people who you can talk to forever. Like, oh my goodness, I'm not a crazy radical in this room, right?
Yeah.
Only in this room. So it feels good to just hear you validate really some of the feelings that I have, right? And I know many people have in the community. When I leave here, I'm going back to ECN and I teach this class, Can There Be Race Equity in Detroit? And I'm trying to help uplift some of the history and some of the knowledge inside of the neighborhoods, because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to teach this to students at Columbia, the folks in Detroit also need to understand some of these things, like how does the Downtown Development Authority really work? And why do we have all of these authorities that have really stolen democracy from us? And my other question is, why do we keep telling people to vote when we take away the political power of the people they're voting for? Yeah. It's like voting becomes an exercise in futility when the city council, even when it's doing a good job, does not control the water, does not control brownfields, does not control downtown authority money. There's so much city council doesn't control that sometimes it feels like it is just a stage play with no real substance. And so I'm excited to have conversations where we're really getting at that, because I don't think we're going to have equity unless we're willing to get at some of these underpinnings of injustice. What policies have you looked at that need to be changed in the near term so that we can move beyond this period that we're in?
Ooh, that's a big question.
I think we have to immediately interrupt the displacement that's happening. There's been and I don't know how we can go back and rectify the 2008 financial crisis, but I just imagine all of the pain and trauma that Black Detroiters experienced during the 2008 financial crisis. 50% of Black wealth disappeared. Mm-hmm. All gone. That's mostly housing. I mean, so many homes are broken. How do you justify that? And when you don't even have any sort of truth and reconciliation, when you don't have any sort of mechanism for recognizing the damage that has happened, how do you rectify that? I mean, how do you quantify somebody losing their kids because they couldn't have their homes? How do you quantify people having a divorce because they're financially stressed out?
You don't quantify, you don't rectify. You should just be grateful to be here. We gave you people an opportunity, and that happened in the past. And quit thinking about the past. You people are always stuck in the past.
Thank God for Mike Duggan coming to save Black Detroit. Oh, my goodness.
It's so much better now.
Him and Dan Gilbert really brought that city back.
Every year, I'll be straight.
Everywhere I travel, people are like, things are really happening in Detroit, aren't they? The city's changed so much. And it's just hard because, I'm like, man, I was there when a pregnant woman's water got shut off on my block. That's part of New Detroit. You know, my parents, we lost our home. That's part of New Detroit. It's for 150,000, 200,000 Detroiters, a third of the city lost their homes.
Yeah. And then,
what do we do about that?
And then the mayor will say, everybody fill out the census forms. Please fill out the census forms, because if you don't fill out these census forms, the city's going to lose money. And folks are like, huh? The money that we're raising, and how many people lost city jobs who were tax-paying Detroiters living in the city, acknowledging they lived in the city, paying taxes to the city, paying car insurance while living in the city. And we're attracting in a class of people who live in the city in these apartments Detroiters can't afford, and still claim their parents' address so they don't have to pay city taxes and don't have to pay city car insurance. And so, we're in this conundrum where the city wants people who don't really want the city, not fully. And the people who really want the city can't get the love. I don't have a problem with doing some things to broaden and have a welcome. Detroiters have always been welcoming.
We got a lot of space.
When you redirect all resources to economic growth and this need for growth and this need to increase housing values and this need to increase the number of homeowners and this need to increase average wages, we know that in schools, when all the pressure was on there to increase test scores, the easiest way to get there is either A, cheat, or B, push people out. And we're doing a little bit of both because poor people are not responding to census forms, so we really don't know who they are.
Well, I think it's a issue of priorities, right? In emergency management and how the city administration and how the economics of Detroit operate today. Dan Gilbert and private developers are priority number one, right? And then so the woman on your block who they cut the water to, she's a very low priority. I mean, that's how emergency management operated. And I think that's still how the city of Detroit operates today, is that private developers are prioritized with these massive subsidies. I mean, if you look at the subsidies for District Detroit, if you look at for the Little Caesars Arena, that was $200 million. That was supposed to go to Detroit Public Schools, right? And then in terms of when we talk about, Black wealth and property ownership in the city of Detroit, I think Antonio mentioned earlier about how 50% of Black wealth was eviscerated during the financial crisis. Well, in 2016, they found that Detroit homeowners were overtaxed by $600 million. And there's no plan for that. There's no plan to compensate Black homeowners for that injustice. And I think that when you see things like what's happening with District Detroit right now, when Detroit Public Schools is still in many ways languishing for resources, and Dan Gilbert has made his money.
But I mean,
$40 billion.
It's bigger than District Detroit, right? The Downtown Development Authority is a tax capture. And the existence of these tax captures, they capture dollars that would normally go to schools and libraries every day. And then you give tax abatements to businesses that operate there in addition to these, tax diversions or tax captures. And it just makes it difficult for Detroiters to get ahead. When District Detroit was formed, the city expanded the Downtown Development Authority map so that they could include that, but it's only on the District Detroit side of the street. They make promise after promise. They violate every promise. They never come through. You can look at, is it Castellanos and Herman Kiefer and Dennis Castellanos and what he's supposed to do in that area.
The Illiches.
There's no accountability for wealthy people. Don't let me get started on Stellantis because I'm at war with Stellantis' decision to open up this trucking facility on Jefferson. I don't know if you've seen it. It's beautiful. in an area adjacent to a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they
an
said,
unimportant residential neighborhood to them.
Well, the weird thing about this one,
truck butts,
is this residential neighborhood is actually a middle class residential neighborhood where black homeowners spend all of their money purchasing these relatively new homes so they could live in suburban like conditions, and then they open this up. And the reason they were able to do that is because they didn't have to have any public comment. They didn't have to get any approval because it's an M4 intensive industrial district, which should never exist adjacent to a residential neighborhood.
A lot of those in the city.
But it does. And so I want to do a study and a mapping thing where we look at where M4 industrial districts are and who lives near them, and in some cases in them.
Well, we know who lives in and near them: black and brown people, working class people.
Exactly.
That's who lives in them, and that's why they can do that.
And that's the reason I want to be able to document this by numerically. I want to be able to say that of this number of Detroit properties, this percentage of them is considered M4. This is by definition a sacrifice zone.
Yep.
And we have put people in sacrifice zones or built sacrifice zones
Relegated
next to
them
where
to sacrifice
people
zones.
are. And we need to talk about it because
all of Southwest. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're talking about
If
it,
we're
like
talking
these
about
bridge,
in the
these
pollution
logistics infrastructures. I mean, a lot of these
but
new
especially
studies-
Marathon Oil
but
plant
especially
and-
48217.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially the blackest
And
part of
that's-
Southwest Detroit.
Yeah, and that's a black middle class community of retired auto workers where there's a high concentration of voters, a high concentration of cooperative banks. And, what does their vote get them?
Exactly.
You think they're voting to allow Marathon to expand right in their backyards? And
Exactly.
But the folks that you all are highlighting have been the cornerstone of this kind of pushback and fight for equity for years to come. How do we better honor these heroes that have gone so long without being sung?
Lloyd, go ahead on this.
Well, I think that the thing is that other than Joanne Watson, who joined the Ancestors recently, all of these folks are still working. And I think what all of them would tell folks is get involved. I mean, you need to get with an organization. You need to take up the work in your community. We are living in a world where we need that more than ever, in the sense that the water fight is not over. No. Like, it is far from over. In fact, Antonio pointed to the parallels with Palestine. Palestine had 97% of the water is contaminated. They recently said that we're gonna start shutoffs again in Detroit, but we're gonna start with the wealthier residents. I'm sure you all have seen that.
Yeah,
you have all seen
We've
that.
covered it.
But it's a matter of time before they get back to the target of poor and working class people, because these fights are ongoing. And I think, the best way that you can honor the people who have done this work is to join them in that work. Because, what we're talking about here and what have been talking about here is the problem of racial capitalism, which needs to end. And when you put profits before people, neoliberal governance is the result.
Yes.
And that's what's happening in Detroit. That's what's happening globally.
I feel like it's even harder now that alternative media has declined. The media landscape in Detroit is really tough. There are some really key sort of leftist newspapers that would really have the Voice of Detroit, Michigan Citizen. There's institutions that are just failing and declining. So it's hard for the voices of these people who are on the ground to break into the mainstream, to break into your social media feed. So finding ways to, go to this website, check them out, look at these activists, check out what they're doing, check out what we the people
Give them the
But
website.
you know what? The thing is too, there's not that many of us, right?
No.
And we are so fragmented in our fights.
Yes.
I don't like this person. They did this one time. I don't like that person. They did this on such. And when we do that, we allow ourselves to be divided and failing. How many people have not wanted to work with organizations that I've worked with, or don't want to work with my organization right now because of something that happened 15 years ago, or they don't like, there's a lot of things to dislike about me, but whatever, that it shouldn't be about me. It shouldn't be about my organization. It should be about the fight. And if the fight is we all want the water to work, then we all need to fight on the same ground and find ways to hold hands even when we don't like who we're holding hands with. I feel as though the mayor is very good at playing us against each other. He will give this person a grant for this. He'll go to the grassroots and say, you know what, don't listen to these big nonprofit organizations because they're getting all the money and they're taking money from you. And those people want to then work with the mayor because the mayor sees me. And why are we letting somebody who is not investing in your neighborhoods tear us apart like this? So I really hope that what we can do is unify around some policy goals and objectives. Dislike each other when we go home, but come together to fight for people, because it's not about us. It should be about the fight.
Yeah. Can you guys give us some info on where we can find out more about Voices from the Grassroots and tell us what's coming up next?
Yeah, so we're having a launch event on Thursday, October 26th at 6 p.m. at Wayne State University Law School, because that's where Deal is housed out of. That's going to be an opportunity to get better acquainted with the website. We'll do a presentation, show some clips from these interviews, and more importantly, like the bulk of that event is not going to be about just like walking through the website. It's going to be in conversation with several of the folks that we interviewed for this project, reflecting on this period of struggle, issuing calls to action on what they're doing right now. And then we're going to break into some workshop groups where like people can actually get with each other to talk about what's going on in their neighborhoods, talk about what lessons can be drawn from this history, this living history that we've been putting together here. And so we're trying to think about this as a launch event that's not just about presenting a website or announcing this, but as kind of something that people can get together around, learn from organizers and activists, and hopefully like become activated in the process or deepen commitments to organize and work.
I love it.
How do we get you on the east side?
Well, we're all on the west side.
West side is the best side.
Well, you know,
Let me tell you,
come over anytime.
no, we want to bring you to our community
he just said
and bring, you know, listen, I'm a
document
transplant.
some-
I was born on the west side, live on the east side, love the east side. I'm not leaving. But here's my question. How do we bring you east? Because what you're doing is important. We have the access to people who really need to hear. I think we need to do this citywide so that people all throughout the city can hear the same information and be encouraged to join.
And validate the terrible experiences they had throughout this period. I mean, there's a lot of people who have a lot of deep trauma from this period that we've all gone through collectively, you know, as Detroiters. And yeah, I think there needs to be these voices to help, like, you know, like, because people like are so stuck in their day-to-day issues. They might not have the language, they might not have the history, they might not have the words to like express like the stress and the pain and the moving and the water, all the things they were going through in those periods. So I think this like archive can help contextualize it for people, and I think that's deeply necessary.
Right.
And one of the things that like I just want to make clear about this is that we don't claim this, and by no means is this a definitive collection of the voices of grassroots organizers. This is a starting point.
It's a great starting
And one of the
point.
things that we have on this site that I just want to like highlight is a resources section where we've created guides for people to go out into their communities and do oral histories and submit them to this project, because this can't just be a centralized project. We want this to be a project that is collectively owned by the people, that they can contribute to and see themselves represented within, because I think that's one of the biggest contributions of this project is like, let's demystify who is an activist and who is an organizer, because we've done a terrible disservice in the way that we teach social movements in history in this country, which is not by accident. It's not a coincidence, in that we are teaching generations of students that activists and organizers are these great men or great women, and we often distort and like just bend totally out of shape their work and their legacies in ways that's unrecognizable from what they were doing in that moment. And that makes that kind of work oftentimes for our students like unattainable. They don't see themselves reflected in the people who are like being put up in history books. And here we are trying to make an intervention in that, is saying like, no, change makers and history makers are all around us. We have value in our communities, we have expertise, and we have fighters in our communities. And those are the people that are going to be making changes.
Peter, Lloyd, Antonio, thank y'all for coming on the podcast. We appreciate you guys being here. What's the website, or what's the event info one more time?
Voicesfromthegrassroots.org. That has all the information for the launch event, and that's where you'll be able to find all these interviews.
And I have to shout out Black Bottom Archives. It's a similar project that's also
shout-outs
really
coming
important.
out. Save your shout-outs. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Now it's time for shout-outs. What's your shout-out?
Yeah, I want to to shout out Black Bottom Archives. I think they're doing a lot of similar work. They're actually paying people who are from Black Bottom $100 just to like record their stories. So that's another institution that I think is doing a really great work.
Yeah. Camille is actually one of the founders of that, right? Camille Johnson. Yeah.
And Black to Land. Shout out Black to Land. That's the organization I rep with these days.
Anybody else got any shout outs?
Yeah, I'll shout out the Policing and Social Justice History Lab. It's part of the Carceral State Project, which I work with at the University of Michigan in the history department. We're actually going to be doing a history event on the Detroit Coalition Against Police Brutality on November 4th. It's going to be in community at the General Baker Institute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be on November 4th, 2 p.m. So
come
and see us.
Yeah, and speaking of GBI, there's another event coming up at GBI this Wednesday. We were talking about tax captures earlier. There's a coalition of Detroiters for tax justice, I think it's called.
Coalition for Property Tax Justice.
Different coalition.
Oh, not that one.
Detroiters for Tax Justice. I think that's the name of the organization. They're hosting an event at GBI on Wednesday about the land value property. That whole debate. So that's coming up.
There's an explainer on what that means on bridgedetroit.com. If in case you want a full breakdown of what that could mean. Donna, do you have any shout out?
Yes, I want to shout out Loretta Yancey, a freedom fighter on the east side of Detroit who passed away last week. And she was the type of person, she came into a room and she was just ready to rumble. A former Panther, community leader. And I was talking to her daughter yesterday, and she was telling me about, the experience of having shared her mother with the community and how she wanted the community to come to her home so they could reconnect when they had a visitation in her home, which is, kind of unusual in this day and age. But Loretta was a friend to our organization. She was at the Eastside Extravaganza and died suddenly from an aneurysm. She's going to be funeralized on Friday, and we're having the repast at ECN. So if you know and love Loretta Yancey, if you don't make it to the funeral, be sure to stop by ECN and just let her family know that she meant something to you. She's one of those people. I don't know if you interviewed her, but she should have been interviewed because she gave us the blues. And I say that in a good way. She was a person who would hold you accountable. And I've always loved community members who don't just sit there meekly, mildly listen to what you say, but, shake it up. And she was one.
Loretta Yancey is one of my greatest teachers. Right, coming up as a young person in community development and organizing and having to organize the Chandler Park neighborhood on numerous occasions, my relationship with Loretta Yancey was solidified and a really, really good one and loving one. And I'm going to miss her. I also want to give a belated birthday shout out to another amazing community member on the East Side, Minnie Lester, who turned 80 last week. And her birthday is significant because a couple weeks prior, she had a mild heart attack and almost didn't make it. And so we want to honor Mrs. Lester and all that she has done and is still doing in the Jefferson Chalmers community and the Southeast Waterfront Neighborhood Association. I also want to shout out Angela Reyes and the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation for allowing Bridge Detroit to host our conversation series number 3 on water and water affordability, where residents came and we the people were out to rigorously question DWSD Director Gary Brown and State Senator Stephanie Chang and State Rep Donovan McKinney. I love the work we do at Bridge Detroit, and I love that we are able to bring these power brokers to community for accountability in the way that we do it. That's going to do it for this episode of Authentically Detroit. We will see you same time next week. Be good, everybody.